Welcome to Daily Meditation with Sangha Live.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Lovely to see you all coming in. I'm getting a message on my computer that my internet connection is unstable. Normally, this is totally fine, but just to let you know, if I do get cut off, I think I just can come back into the room. And if everybody gets cut off, then you can use the same link to get back in, just in case that happens. And hopefully my sound is okay and you're hearing me okay, but do let me know in the chat how it's going. Thank you, Jane. So, and in terms of sound, I should also mention that I'm in like a little garden office here, and one of the things we have a lot of in all suburban London, but I think particularly in this bit of northeast suburban London, is foxes. And they're quite big and heavy, and they do like to jump on the roof. So sometimes, particularly when it's quiet, we might hear some thundering. Or sometimes cats go on the roof and have a fight. And it's amazing how big pigeons are, you know, when they're walking up and down. So there may be some of that kind of noise, but I hope that it can be a bell of mindfulness for you rather than an annoying distraction. Yes, picture a bit dark. I thought I would experiment with not having the big lights on, partly because then we can see the candles a bit better, which I'm getting really into having candles on. And also because the dawn light is going to come in over the next hour. And I like the idea of that happening while we're sitting. So yeah, let's see how it goes. Can always make changes. So for this week, I'm working with this theme of 7 ways to respond to an unjust burning world without losing your mind, or 7 paths of responsiveness, 7 threads of response. And we're going to go through a couple kind of each day and have a sit and have some questions together. If you would like to ask a question, you know, anytime, feel free to put that in the Q&A. That's really useful because it then doesn't get lost in the chat. And also I can kind of check it anytime. And I also wanted to mention, just before I talk about the first 2 of these paths, just a little bit about anger, because it came up yesterday. In fact, someone emailed me yesterday, and I assumed that they had been in the session because of talking. They were asking, and well, they were responding about anger. Turned out they hadn't. They had just read something that I'd written. So in case people are interested, I'm going to put that in the chat as well, because I've forgotten that I wrote it, but I've been working with these ideas for many years now. So anyway, with regards to anger, the questions came up yesterday. How do I respond to misogyny without anger? How do I, do X or Y or Z without anger? And I kind of quite cheerfully said, nothing wrong with it. Go ahead, be angry. And of course, there's a bit more to it than that. So I just wanted to make a bit of a separation, I think, between anger, the sensation, the feeling, the human emotion, which I think is very important, not just okay, but great. And because of the way it connects us to what we deeply feel. And then the expression of anger, which of course we're not necessarily always that great at. So there's a lot to go over here. I think I may do a bit more about this in the coming months. But just to say, we're not always kind of socialized or developed in our lives to work well with anger. Some people, often women, but not always, are socialized that anger is very bad and a sign of weakness, a sign of being hysterical, not ladylike, not okay. And therefore, it's difficult to express anger, or it's too assertive or too perceived as too aggressive to express anger. Other people, often men but not always, are socialized almost as if anger is the only okay emotion. And, you know, joy and fear and grief and love are like not very manly, but anger is, you know, that's a good strong thing. And so we have these really strange messages that can make our anger come out sideways and can make us not very familiar with that process of connecting to what the anger is telling us and then expressing it in a way that is firm and strong and useful, in order to protect what we care about without damaging other people in terms harming people's dignity, harming our relationships with other people. But I'm here to tell you from the other side of having learned how to deal better with my own anger, that there are ways of expressing it that don't damage dignity and that don't harm and that don't damage relationships. And yeah, I just wanted to say that because I think I was a bit glib yesterday in my efforts to push against the cultural messages that anger is automatically bad and wrong and silly and a mistake and, you know, not very highly evolved or spiritual. Anyway, so much to talk about there, but I'm going to come back to my themes, which are the 7 paths of responsiveness. And I am going to stick them in the chat so that it's clear. So here they are. And today I'm going to talk about the first 2, which are contemplating causes and conditions, or considering history, and guarding your sense doors. And these are kind of going to be super brief overviews, really. And I'm going to be doing a day of practice on all of this with a lot more detail and some practical exercises and so on in February, 22nd of February on Sangha Live. So do bear that in mind. Okay. So considering causes and conditions, this is really a core part of Buddha's teachings. When we experience a phenomenon, to not only experience it in the here and now, but to consider where it came from. And this could be a feeling, like anger. It's a good example, actually. Where does our anger come from? And I think Kaz mentioned the link there between anger and grief. Let me just look. Yeah. Often anger is connected to grief or fear. But yeah. So considering causes and conditions of an experience or a feeling like anger, or of something like our body, and we can expand that to our social world. And almost anything can take us into these understandings of history, which I find really interesting. Like almost any object can connect us to a lot of big social ideas and ways of thinking, as well as lots of kind of dharma ideas. So an example. So I can look at my tea, which I still haven't finished, my tea, and I can see the water, which came from the sky and the land, was cleaned by the water company, Thames Water, piped to my home by people who are working in structures that were set up decades ago. And they're using physical structures, the pipes, some of which were set up hundreds of years ago. So in my tea, there are water molecules, but there's also the work of Victorian town planners, Isambard Kingdom Brunel, who designed a lot of the infrastructure around here. And, you know, all of the money that was invested at that time, the social energy, the sense that this was a priority, that people should have clean water, access to clean water. So I can also look at the water molecules and think about my molecules and think about atoms and think about how much water is in me and think about where it all came from however many billion years ago in the sun. We can go in that direction just from this inquiry of like causes and conditions. Where did things come from? So if we look at the tea socially, why do a person born and brought up in England, living in London, why do I love tea? You know, why is it normal to drink tea? Although apparently that's changing. In the mid 1600s, there was Charles II's wife, Catherine of Braganza. She was really into tea. She came from Portugal, where it was really fashionable, and she made it fashionable at court, and then it spread. And 100 years later, it was really the East India Company got a monopoly, and then the rest is history, as they say. There's a website called tea.co.uk where there's a live tracker of how many cups of tea have been drunk already in the UK. I'm not going to look at it now, but yes, it's many, many thousands and millions throughout the day. So it's a core part of our habits. But even the reasons my taste buds like tea is to do with these really specific histories, you know, to do with people's stories. I can look at the chemicals that have come from the leaves of the tea plants that were grown most likely in Africa or India, picked by hand by people whose labor is still valued in a really similar way to in colonial times because of the way Britain de-developed its colonies and enforced the process of racialization, where people with certain bodies are treated as more disposable. You know, these labor conditions and the sense of who gets paid what and why, very clear historical roots in empire. And of course, the East India Company had an army, was in some ways the beginning of corporations and the relationships between corporations and the state, leading to, you know, the UK's enrichment. And some of the great things we have today came from that excess wealth which was generated by empire, maybe also the pipes that were built. And I find this kind of thinking so useful when we're looking at injustice and social change. Because in order to respond to problems, it's better to have a wise response. It's better to understand more. And there's a literary theorist called Frederick Jameson who talks about this quite a lot. He says, always historicize, you know, always look back to understand what is happening. And so did the Buddha. Look back into where our experiences come from, where the phenomena around us come from. So, and this links to kind of different ways of responding. Let's think about, you know, if we think about corporations and the damage that's being done ongoing, what's a wise response to that damage? If we look at the system as a whole and its roots, and we think it's kind of, oh, it's okay, you know, it's a bit good, it's a bit bad. We just need to tweak it. We just need to up some regulations here, you know, change some working practices there. If we think it's structurally sound, then we can tweak it, the kind of reform approach. And if we think it's very unsound, then we might work on it differently. You know, we might approach it differently. And understanding the history can help us to think this through. And of course, it might be that both are true, but the idea is to kind of make informed, discerning choices about where we place our energy, if indeed we decide to start addressing some issues like this. To get to, you know, the wise response, the appropriate response. You know, there's a Chan master from the 9th century in Yunmen. He was asked what the fruits of a life of practice were. Chan is Chinese Zen the Chinese word for Zen practice. It came before the Japanese Zen. And Yunmen answered, the fruits of a life of practice is an appropriate response. So that's causes and conditions, history, looking at the roots of our experiences, the roots of our social world, the roots of our lives, really. That's one of the paths in this formulation of 7 paths of responsiveness. And the other one that I'll mention, I think, is about guarding the sense doors. But I'm also really noticing the time. It's just gone 7:15 here, and I think it's probably time to sit. So what I'll do is I'll very briefly say something about the sense doors, and then we'll see how we are for time afterwards, because I think it's also really great to have some questions and discussion. Very briefly, what I would like to say about guarding the sense doors is that in my life, what this can look like is thinking about media intake, thinking about curating my news intake, and thinking about all the sense doors and how I can wisely curate what I come into contact with. And I'll come back to that if it feels like there's time afterwards. Yeah. But for now, let's settle in to sit. Or whatever position you're going to be in, settle in for some quiet practice together, some meditation. So feel free to move around, have a stretch. Find your way to feeling grounded and bright, relaxed and alert in your body, if that's available. You might experiment with a little bit of moving around. I quite like to explore this relationship with gravity. Just kind of sensing into what it is to lean a bit, move a bit, and then pick somewhere that feels today like neutral or balance. Not necessarily the same every day. Finding a way to settle, which is grounded and yet bright and open. And sometimes that is a lot about finding kind of a good angle, a good way for your weight to fall down through your body and be met by the support of the earth. So that you can sit or settle freely and as fully as possible. And taking maybe a couple of slightly deeper than usual breaths. Sighing out if that's helpful. Coming into contact with your experience of contact with the ground. Those places where your body is receiving support. Maybe your seat, your legs, your feet, maybe different parts of your body if you're lying or standing. And if you like, experiment. What would it be like to really trust this support? what would happen? What would it be like to trust that support maybe 5% more, 7% more? And starting with some contact with the physical experience, contact with the experience in your body. If you like, an invitation to check in with your physical experience. Different parts of your body, noticing if there's anywhere that's holding on or bracing or doing unnecessary work. And if there are any of these tension patterns, seeing if they might unbrace or unclench or shift, have a little looseness, maybe just 5%. Doesn't have to be very much. Exploring that sense of discernment and shift, that wise skill of wise intervention. Returning to your sense of existing in your body, allowing your attention to sink deeper and more inward, coming into direct contact with the taste of existing. In your body as the foundation. And if you like, if you feel settled enough for an inquiry, I invite an inquiry into maybe some appreciation for your life. Your life, which is one spark in this huge web of interconnection. All the ways that your work, your labor, whether seen or unseen, whether willing or unwilling, has enabled the lives of others, has enabled our world to be a world. All those things you've done and made and built and offered, how they have flowed out from your actions and your intentions to create the world for others, and how in just the same way the labor of so many millions of people has flowed in to enable your world, to support your life. In the same way, seen or unseen, willing or unwilling, part of this enabling, and to appreciate these vast webs of support and the ways in which our lives flourish because of them. To see them clearly for what they are in their complexity, and with appreciation. Coming now to the last few minutes of our practice together, our quiet practice. Invite you, if you like, to bring this sense of appreciation into your heart. Allow it to build, particularly for those close to you who enable your life, who have enabled your world. Whether that's teachers, ancestors, friends, colleagues, neighbors, family. Allowing your warm appreciation and love to be shared with them. As if they enable your life, they enable your practice. So we sit in this way together with appreciation, but also to honor that labor. And allowing that warmth and appreciation and love to spill, to overflow towards all those people who are known to you, towards the earth and other species, out towards those who are less known or unknown, out to each other. Thank you for your practice.
Today's podcast is an offering to you from our archive of freely available live daily classes. We make wisdom teachings and meditations as freely available as possible to as many people as wish to practice. You can help ensure we can continue to support a worldwide Sangha by leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts, by sharing this with someone who'd be interested, and by offering a small financial support at sangha.live/donate.